Native Americans lived along the edges of the San Francisco Bay for thousands of years, evidenced by shell mounds clustered along shorelines, coves, and marshes of the bay. This map shows shell mounds, which doubled as refuse heaps and burial grounds, dotted along the southwestern and northeastern shores of the Tiburon Peninsula. The roadway, which now runs the length of the peninsula, follows the path that the coastal Miwok Indians created. With the arrival of the Spanish and then the Mexicans, these shoreline paths were used as they traversed the peninsula on foot and horseback. When John Thomas Reed was granted the Rancho Corte de Madera del Presidio in 1834, there was little activity on the peninsula. It wasn't until his son, John Joseph, established dairy farms in the 1860s and 70s that the path became a roadway for wagons. His first dairy, the Big Reed, was at the end of Richardson Bay on what is now Blackfield Road. 2 additional dairies were established, one in the area we now call Del Mar, and the other further out the peninsula was the Hilarita Dairy, named for John Joseph's sister, where Reed School is now. The road ended there because there wasn't much land-based activity at Point Tiburon. When the San Francisco and North Pacific Railroad was extended from San Rafael to Tiburon in 1884, it cut across the marshes of the Corte Madera estuary and tunneled through the hill at the end of the Tiburon Peninsula, coming out near the Big Reed Dairy, where a station called Reed's was established. The rail line did not go out to the shore until it went through another tunnel and across a long trestle over the marsh, where 50 years later a horse named Blackie was pastured. From there the rails followed the shore just like the road, but continued past Hilarita, around Red Hill, and across the edge of a large lagoon, which stretched from the Belvedere Peninsula to the filled land that became Tiburon. Although the railroad brought much activity to Tiburon, the primary access was via the rails, so the Reed Ranch Road was not extended beyond Hilarita. When Belvedere began to be developed in the 1890s, the main road went along the Miwok Causeway to the Belvedere Peninsula. This was named County Road and later San Rafael Avenue. It ended at a drawbridge which connected Corinthian Island onto Tiburon's Main Street. From 1901 until the early 1940s, there was a Tiburon Boulevard on the peninsula. It was a route that went along the northeastern side of the peninsula that was both maligned for its poor construction and many landslides, but praised for its beauty. We now call it Paradise Drive. In 1919, the old Reed Ranch Road was added to the state highway system. Designated Route 52, it covered about 4¼ miles from the Alto crossing with Redwood Highway to Tiburon. By 1923, crushed rock replaced the dirt road, and it was rerouted for the first 3/4 of a mile straight over the hill to the Strawberry Drive intersection, instead of the old route, which went via Belvedere Drive through Strawberry. By 1931, the highway was properly paved, and finally included the last section from Hilarita into Tiburon, over the newly filled lagoon. In 1948, Marin County officially named the highway Tiburon Boulevard. By the early 1950s, the population of the peninsula was quickly outgrowing the winding, hilly, narrow 2-lane road. At the request of the Tiburon Coordinating Council, representing unincorporated Tiburon residents, the State Highway Department proposed a rerouting and expansion to 4 lanes of the Tiburon Highway. Large property owners and developers applauded the plan, but many residents felt the peninsula would cease to be a place of beauty. Among the ardent supporters was Reedport Properties, who were planning to fill the tidelands of Richardson Bay for a 2,000-home development. In the midst of this debate, the state presented a proposal for a bridge crossing from San Francisco to Tiburon via Angel Island. This outrageous yet very serious 1957 plan included a highway right down the middle of the Tiburon Peninsula to join Highway 101 at Larkspur. Although the plan was eventually abandoned, it sparked more opposition to expanding the existing Tiburon Highway. But the state insisted on starting the upgrade in June 1962, and by November 1963, a 4-lane divided highway from 101 to just past the Bel Air Shopping Center, now the Cove, was complete. In 1961, the state changed the name to Highway 131, but the highway was more commonly known as Tiburon Boulevard. In the summer of 1964, on the 5th attempt, the city of Tiburon finally incorporated. The drive for more development, including the expansion of the highway, had pushed more of the residents to take control over the future of the peninsula. However, the next stage of the highway was going forward. This part, from Blackfield Road to Reed Ranch Road, was rerouted via a cut into the hill behind the new Baptist church, dividing off the original coastal route, which became Greenwood Beach Road. The fill from excavating this new route was trucked across Blackie's pasture and dumped along the shore on both sides of the knoll near Del Mar. This fill was in preparation for the third stage, which would have 4 lanes along the shore all the way to San Rafael Avenue, including leveling the knoll. The second stage was completed by the end of 1965. Soon after, the Highway Department declared there was no money in their budget to continue the 4-lane extension for at least 5 years. With the new city of Tiburon fully in charge, development of the peninsula became more restricted. The population growth slowed considerably, rising only 500 from 1960 to 1970. In 1974, the city engineer declared that the 2-lane portion of Tiburon Boulevard was substandard for the traffic demands, and that the expansion to 4 lanes was justified. But because the residents didn't want it changed, the city would leave it as it is. Even though it was decided to drop the 4 lanes all the way to Tiburon, the state continued to insist that the curve at Trestle Glen was too sharp and the grade too steep, and so it needed to be realigned. The Highway Department maintained that the only solution was an elevated 4-lane overpass cutting through Blackie's pasture, returning to 2 lanes just past Stewart Drive. A beautiful plan for Blackie's and the entire route into Tiburon was commissioned by the town in 1973. But in spite of its elegant use of the shore, the population was divided about the proposed plans. The heated debate over crossing Blackie's pasture, a proposed city park, with a 4-lane overpass, came to a head during the campaign for the town of Tiburon council seats in 1978. The people spoke, and 3 new council members were elected who opposed the overpass, and that was the end of the so-called Tiburon Embarcadero. In the years since, small changes have been made to the boulevard, like traffic lights and some widening. However, it mostly remains the same. The ancient knoll still rises above the bay, and the highway fill along the shore became McKegney Green in the south of Knoll Park. Even though Tiburon Boulevard is pounded by thousands of cars and trucks every day, it retains its panoramic beauty and still follows the ancient path.